Well, I'm just waiting for Sifu Boggy. God only knows what he's doing, but I'm sure he'll be here presently, whatever that means. Present, in a moment, in the moment. There's no time like the present. Wrong. There's no time in the present. So let me just see what's happening and see if this has gone live. Sorry about this, chaps. There we are. That's fine. So if anybody's there, you can say nice comments because I can now see them. And what I'll have to do is see if jolly old Sifu has messaged me on this other device. Okay, it asks, I don't get notified till, I'm not sure what that means. Okay. Right. Robert, nice to see you. We're just having a few technical problems. Now, people in these communities say, oh, well, that's because the enemy's trying to stop us. I've got no idea whether that happens, but, you know, we'll just give it a few more moments and see what goes on. And I'll just send a little comment. It's a coded comment to Sifu Buggy. It's WTF. Oh, dear. So, oh, look, something's happened. Sifu Buggy, Taoist life coaching, fitness, health, healing, key worker is entered the room. There he is. Sifu Buggy, hello, good evening. Nice to see you.
Yeah, it's not been a nightmare at all.
Now, let me if you tell me how to share this to your page, then I'll do that.
Well, actually, I'm on the computer. Well, I'm not on the computer. I'm on my phone, but I've got the computer in front of me, and I can actually go to your page and share it myself.
Well,
so
do that then. That sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, doesn't it just? It would be. So how are you, dear sir?
Yes, I'm plodding along in these very strange and undulating and oscillating and vibrating times. I've been battered actually over the last month or two by all sorts of different things, but you know, I'm not bad at coping with stuff, to be honest with you. And when I say coping, I just mean almost surfing through what comes up a day at a time. And what it's really taught me even more so is just to focus on one breath at a time, accept what's coming in. Don't try and analyze it because it's just too difficult to understand because there's so many sort of multifarious sort of influences happening to us. And I think in order to help people, we've got to be able to show that we can do this as well, you know, and, you know, I think that we are leaders in this field, although some people say there aren't leaders, and I don't agree with that because, you know, we can get onto the meaning of words and stuff, but, you know, all I'm really doing is sharing my experience and my strength, not my weaknesses, because that's what I used to do, Sifu. I used to just moan on and groan on about how dreadful the world was. And if others just behaved in the way that I thought they should, my world would be a better place.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and I was put directly in my place by somebody who didn't give two hoots about my qualifications. But he cared for me, and he basically just smacked me right between the eyes with the truth that if you're pointing the finger, then you're giving your power away, you know, and that I am responsible for every single choice that I make. Every single choice has led me to this position where we are right now, and that's how the universe seems to work, you know. So how am I making the choices? and what are the influences that are causing me to choose various things. Over to you, old boy. And by the way, you seem like slimmed down and you're looking rather well.
Well, yeah, call me Slim Shady or Slim Sifu. So, but yeah, I mean, well, it's fun. It's interesting how, yeah, the world. There's definitely interesting things going on. It's definitely, I feel, for me and Els, like lots of things are happening to us, and then we're having to sort of, like you say, lead by example, and you know, and sort of like show that proof into the pudding. And I really always much believed in that. Is, you know, is the best way to show what you do is to do it. And yeah, it's adapting my own philosophies, adapting my own, doing my own stuff, and yeah, it's definitely been keeping, you know, to say the least, it's definitely been keeping me on my toes, and it's definitely it's definitely interesting going. To say, I've been very cryptic because I've really, there's sort of like things are happening in the family. It's a bit more personal, but yeah, there's lots of stuff happening that we're adapting to too, and you know, and trying to make things, you know, finding your way through and making things work. But I always look back to 2 years ago. I was living in a shared house, sharing. Basically had a bedroom and kitchen with rats in it, with a leaking roof, and you know, I was very much, you know, always sunshine and light, you know, on the outside, because that's what I wanted, that's what I focused on. But you know, you know, and that thing of, you know, for me, that was a sort of an extreme of, you know, you really want to show the world how to be, then you be it. Then, you know, you be in the, have a dire life, and you prove it by still living sunshine and rainbows, which I did. And then things happen, you know, that was, you know, just at, you know, well, before actually 2020. And then lots of things happened in 2020. You know, my dad passed away, and lots of things which were both sad, but also gave me the opportunity to do new stuff. So I've had to be, and I have been working, you know, working against the flow, and trying to find your own balance within the chaos, which is what my name means. For, you know, quite, you know, 23 years. And then this year, it's really, in some ways, it's the best year I've had almost ever, apart from also my daughter being born. But you know, I've got a beautiful woman that I love, living up here in Lincolnshire. But there's still stuff going on. There's still things, and like for her, you know, it's been quite tough. And it's like, you have to understand that there's always this ebb and flow. You know, is that, you know, I think, yeah, things can be a lot better, but there will always be a price for that. I've said this ever since I was 12, for goodness sake, that you can have whatever you want in life as long as you're willing to pay the price. But you don't get to determine or decide what the price is and how much you should pay. But everything is on the table. Everything is possible, but the universe will decide what that price is. So things could happen to you, and you go, "Oh, why is this happening to me?" Well, I feel you're paying for something, and people love using that word karma, but they use it incorrectly, because a lot of the time they'll say karma. Oh, you're paying for your past lives. Karma means tally. It means a tally of this for that. So it could mean past lives, but half the time it doesn't. Half the time you're paying for something, or the past, or even the future, because that's, I think, for me, I love quantum physics, and the whole idea that the past, the present, and the future is happening all at once resonates with me fully, because certain things I've done, remote viewing, and certain things that I actually, there's a part of me that went back into the past to when I was 6, and then all the years up to there, like when I tried to commit suicide when I was a teenager, and I was literally there for myself, saying, "Boggy, you're going to be fine. I know, because I'm you." And I remember that energy. I remember that felt something felt really familiar, and yet at the same time it was, you know, like this like this light, this guide. So I know that the past, present, and future is happening all the same time, and I know that half the time we pay for stuff in advance. So yeah, that's so, you know, when the wave goes up and down, I always say when you're at the bottom, look up, because that's where you're heading. And that's my philosophy. But anyway, over to you, Doc.
Can I say that you still seem to go on a lot? There's somebody making comments here. Shaw9 Friel or something. I think it's an Israeli name or something.
Oh, okay.
And she wants to know more about what you just mentioned, condom physics.
Condom physics. Yeah, it's a bit rubbery, and you might not want to know what's inside.
Right. But I think it's important that we, funnily enough, talk about sensitivity. Because sensitivity and light as a feather, it's very important to be feather light in our sensitivity, I would say. But to go back to what you say, yes, there's a massive shift in consciousness going on across the planet. Now, whether that's as a result of great astronomical changes taking place in the universe, and if it's not in this universe, it may be in another universe or another universe, and it may be to do with the rays of the sun that in ancient Egypt to do with Ra and the god of the Sifu. I don't know. I really don't know. I have feelings and I resonate with certain things, and I do actually resonate with the history of ancient Egypt, but not as we were told it as children, you know, because it's almost like I'm in a place where I can't believe anything anymore that man has had a hand in. I just can't, you know. And so what I did was, over 30 odd years ago, I was instructed to hand my will and my life over to the care of the universe as I understood it. And since that, right, my life has changed dramatically for the better. I stopped drinking, then I stopped smoking, then I became more healthy, then I started to travel the world and all that sort of thing. But based upon one thing, not looking outward for guidance, but looking inwards, you know. And where I'm up to now is, I think that that's what's happening to the whole human race. I think that we're being guided to stop expecting and to start inspecting, to start trusting ourselves and the power that resides and work through us, and to trust that power one breath at a time. And that's what I've done for all those years, and it's paid very, very good dividends, really. But, you know, I used to be a pushover, Sifu. I was that sensitive that I didn't like to upset people. So if they asked me to do favors, called the gross people pleaser. I had no self-worth and self-confidence. I had lots of qualifications, and I did more and more qualifications to try and say to people, look, I'm not stupid, I'm clever, you know, and this, that, and the other. And I realized today that was just really trying to impress other people. And you know what? A function of age or a function of growth or a function of whatever, I couldn't give a two shits now whether I impress anybody, right? It's how I feel about myself. This sounds very selfish, but it isn't, right? It's how I feel and how I consider myself and how I evaluate myself. That's become more important than anything else. What other people think of me is of no consequence to me whatsoever anymore. And it sounds very harsh, that, but it's not, you know. And it's not that I don't care, but I've become carefree rather than careless. There we are. I'm using words in a special way tonight, and it seems to be waxing and flowing lyrically. So I'm going to pass over. Yes, wax on, wax off, and F off. When I say F off, it's a nice thing because it means focus on feelings first. That's my F off approach to life, and it seems to be working.
Yeah, it's yeah. Well, I always understood there's this thing on, yeah, selfless, or are you selfish or selfless, and there's an interesting, well, that's a whole story on its own. But there's information called Ra, the law of one, which was channeled information, and you can take it with a pinch of salt. You can, go by it. But there's an interesting thing in there, and it talks about service to self and service to others. And, and service to self doesn't always mean selfish, but and selfish to others doesn't always mean selfless, because you can be service to others but give so much to others that you actually burn yourself out, or you can be service to self and not give any. But there should be a balance, and it's very much, well, at least with my teachers about, in Taoism, it's this very much about service to self and service to others should be balanced in the essence of, you always have to fill your cup first. You always have to help you first, because you can't help everybody else if you aren't energized yourself. So you need to be. So they would say, 51% to you, energize you, 49% to everybody else. And I've had people in the past say, that's selfish. It's like, but if I'm 51% to me, and that means I never burn out and I supercharge, then 49% of the rest of the time I'm helping others. How is that selfish? How is that? Because I can help others forever. But if I help out others 90% of the time and only gave 10% to myself, I'd burn out. And it's this. I think there's a lot of words that need to be changed, and a lot of things that we need to understand in a different way. We've learned things. There's a lot of information. There's certain information that sort of says that everything's inverted, everything's the wrong way round. Information like about science, information about what we think's right, what we think's wrong, and it's all inverted. And like you, I love that saying. Oh well, one of the things I studied, which was remote viewing, which is actually an oxymoron on the name, because it's not remote and it's not really viewing, because what it is, it's a technique to find information in the universe through looking within. So you look within and you find information in the universe. And people would say, but how can you find within from, how can you find the information in the universe from within? Because everything is you. That, if you go on the quantum field, the science of the quantum field, everything's connected to everything else, everything's with you. So when you look in and you start feeling inwards and you actually listen to your heart, don't listen to this. There's an interesting thing in Taoism. They talk about monkey mind and Taoist thought, or Buddha thought. And Buddha thought is in the heart and monkey mind is in the forebrain. Now, we actually know there's 60 to 90,000 thoughts up here playing around all the time. And it's almost like the cartoons. It's a metaphor of the devil and the angel on your shoulders. This will shout at you, and this will tell you you're wrong. And there's also just very quickly one thing I wanted to say. I found it interesting, or like certain people say about the voices in your head. I don't have voices in the head, because that would mean I'm crazy. Everybody has voices in their head. As far as I know, everybody has voices in their head. It could be their own voice, it could be their parents, and they're not all positive, they're not all negative, but everyone I know has voices in their head. And it's when you start listening here, you feel. I don't know if you, Doc, has the same, but for me, this is more feeling. This is more healing, or hearing, or visual. It's more active here. This is more subtle, and this is more quiet, and this is more just an innate feeling. You sort of pick things up and go, oh, what's this and what's that? And in remote viewing, it's very, very subtle, and you have to do it in a way that every time you pick something up, you're observing it in a way that you're not trying to analyze it. Because the issue is, we analyze far too much with this, and that's what gets us in trouble. It's got me in trouble freaking 52 years of my life. So I do my best to listen to this more than to this. Over to you, Doc.
I agree. We use different words to explain the same principles. I agree. I see this as the seat of stinking thinking. Okay? It's the thing that looks out for danger and it's always sort of in a hyper vigilant mode, just in case. And I think that what blocks us off from that still silence voice that's trying to emerge and guide us from the heart. So what I learned was, as part of my recovery, I learned about meditation and mindfulness. And mindfulness isn't meditation, but meditation can lead you to mindfulness. And mindfulness to me is complete and utter acceptance of what is in the moment, you know, and that means that you can sit there and feel disturbed, and yet you can be detached from it and not interfering with it. And I think when you're feeling emotionally disturbed, it's actually emotions that have been repressed and suppressed and everything else that are trying to come up into your awareness, so you can actually learn something from that particular emotional disturbance. And that's why my big thing now is that if you are feeling emotionally disturbed, it's not to do with that divine part of you. It's actually an ego trip that needs clarification, really. And, you know, you see, I believe that mind, body, mind, soul, and spirit, I think there's almost like 4 aspects to what each human being is. And most of us, for the most part, only live in body, mind. You know, lots of people don't actually get to the place where their heart opens and their soul starts to speak to them, you know. And what I've realized as well, Sifu, is that the soul is not the source of unconditional love either, because the soul has got its own agenda. So there's a condition to the soul that it chose before it incarnated in here, you know. And we've talked before, is I have visions that come in, you know. Sometimes they're really, really clear and they clear up, but most of the time they're very subtle. And I have to sort of watch it rather than analyze it until it becomes more clear and means something to me, you know. And, you know, I don't know what I'm talking about really, but as normal, you know, but I think more than anything else is if you can get to know your own symbology and make meaning of your own metaphors, it doesn't matter whether anybody else understands it, because it's very difficult, isn't it? When you have a psychic change and a spiritual experience, it's difficult to actually describe it to somebody else. You know, it's been a massive change in you, and you're trying to explain it to people, and they're going, "Oh, you know, this is boring," you know. But the whole point is, it's how it changes you, and that's what I've learned is that I used to jump in all the time when I felt emotionally disturbed, and I'd take a drink or a drug or a cigarette or smoke or eat anything to quell that disturbance. And I've realized now that the disturbance is there on its way out, to be looked at and to be let go of. But if it gets into me head, right, and I analyze it, it'll just go back down again. And tomorrow it'll pop up in another form once again to be looked at, you know. And so, you know, Taoism to me is about the closest philosophy to the way I live. And what I think Taoism is find out what works for you and do more of it, right? You know, and don't let anybody else say that's right or wrong. If it's working for you, you feel more enthusiastic and vital about life, then that, in my opinion, is what's correct for you, as long as it's not directly harming somebody else physically, you know. And I think it's about physical. And just the final thing that's coming to me is, this is not really about a philosophy. This is about action, because I think it's action and taking a step which grounds it, which helps us to go forward. Because I've listened to the greatest philosophers in the world who are actually broke, they've got no money, and they're begging for food all the time, you know. And to me, that doesn't seem right anymore, you know. I think there's got to be a balance between spirituality and materialism. Having said that, this could be a whole load of old bollocks, you know, but in the end, you know, find yourself, be yourself, and make something beautiful of that. Over to you, old fruit.
What he said, cucumber. So, but yeah, it's that. Yeah, I think I feel, change the word think. I feel that we've gone through these different ages, and I'm sort of talking more about. So like, you know, one state, or quite recently, we're very, very physical, and we've got to do stuff, and there was an age or a period where a lot of people were very spiritual and very hairy fairy, as one of my friends used to call it. And and or too much in very emotional and too much in the emotion, not so much the heart, but the emotions. And you've got to be a little bit of all three. You've got to, there's got to be physicality, there's got to be you know, feeling it and enjoying it, but there's got to be action as well, because you know, like you said, there's all these philosophers and there's an so I find Taoism very interesting in the essence of, I call it Western Taoism and actual Eastern Taoism. Western Taoism is very theory based, it's very philosophical, and they talk about, oh, you know, in Lao Tzu or Lao Tzu, as a lot of people say, the Tao Te Ching, it says, you know, the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao, so it means nothing. And it's like, no, you're missing the point. You're missing the point. Is that Tao means the way, the path, the balance. So my way is not your way. You know, Sifu Boggy's way is Sifu Boggy's way. So finding my balance, finding my path is what works for me. Finding your path, what works for you. So the Tao that can be named is not the true Tao, meaning it's not your Tao. You've got to find your own freaking Tao. Stop trying to nick mine. But it's this, but in that, I do feel there is a physical Tao, a physical way, an emotional way, and a spiritual way. And like you said, there's all these people that are really much, you know, focusing so much on certain concepts or so much on this, but they're missing everything else. And it has to, you have to have action. There has to be, you know, physical stuff there. You have to feel it. If you don't feel it, you become a robot. And you know, it's, you know, it's like relationships. If you don't feel in a relationship, if you just, you know, like trot along, then you'll miss all that wonder and the magic. But if you're too much into one thing and not doing practical stuff, it can fall apart. So it's this whole thing of balance. There's actually a symbol, like we call, well, Tai Chi or Yin Yang, as a lot of people call. But there's another one which that's called the 3 ones, which says like 3 little fish and dot, and that is the Trinity. And the Trinity is all about the divine masculine, but as an energy, as a, you know, doing something and asserting yourself. The divine feminine as the feeling and maintaining things, and the sacred child as the playing and activating. You need all 3. You need to balance all 3. And that's what I think that a lot, I grew up in a world that, to me, everybody's too freaking serious and taking life too bloody seriously. And they're too, you know, they've lost their sacred child. And so I play and I'm a freaking lunatic. And you know, people, oh, but the whole idea is that if I make you smile and I make you laugh, I'm activating your heart and I'm doing what is, right. Next, I'm helping you find a little bit of that silliness, because when you know, if you lose that sacred child, yes, it's all very well knowing the masculine side of you and the feminine side of you, but that sacred child side of you, that silliness, that, hey, what do I know? Never take yourself or anything else too seriously. That's important too. But you need action, not just knowledge. You need action with that knowledge, because it's all very well knowing how to cook. If you don't cook, you're going to starve, you bugger. So, you know, you have to know how to cook. You have to then cook, and then sharing it with people is where the fun is. Because what's the point cooking for yourself? That's boring. Cook for others, and it makes more fun. Over to you, Doc.
I love this. I think we're at a point now where triangles and triangulation is becoming important, really, and that's just the unification, really. And I see that the mother and father have been knocking hell out of one another for a long time now, but suddenly the child's speaking up to say, hey, you two, I've had enough of this now. So I'm attached and I'm uncluttered, so I can see clearly. So the child is actually feeding mum and dad, and it's helping them to collaborate and cooperate now. There's something in biomedical sciences and in medicine. It's called the autonomic nervous system, if you like. That's the yin on the one side, the yang on the other. And there's been a state of what's called accentuated antagonism for eons of time. And now what's happening is, as the child opens up and starts to assert itself more, it's almost like the golden egg has cracked now. and there's almost like a fourth dimension coming into play. What's actually happened is mum and dad are starting to work together now under the direction of the Holy Child. I've got no idea what I'm talking about. And by the way, I'm not suggesting that anybody takes any notice of what I'm saying here. I'm just trying to explain it in the way that it comes to me, you know. And I think more than anything else is the child works from the heart. It hasn't got a this or that. It's almost a choiceless awareness where it just knows automatically what to do next. But it's guided by unconditional love. So if there's no choice, there are no conditions, there's just flow. And that's what I was trying to get across to people is emotional disturbance means the head's involved. You're back in the boxing ring having a fight. And they say, you know, if you don't want to fight, don't get into the boxing ring. And I think that that's the sit with the child, as the child. I know this doesn't make much sense, but I think more and more people intuitively are starting to understand the feeling that goes with being the child, the happy, the uncluttered, the unconditioned, the disengineered, you know, all those things. Because Sifu, I think unwittingly we've been conned since the day we were born. It's almost like we were born and then we were clobbered by a materialistic viewpoint that if you behave like this, you will make money and you will be happy. If you climb the ladder of success, you will make money, you'll be happy, you will have power. It's a big con job. I think what's happening to people now is it's almost like this sort of thing is being deconstructed and people are saying to themselves, hang on, I've been on this treadmill of madness for such a long time. Things need to change, but you can't change from within the same madness that created it. You've got to come out of that. And that's what I'm trying to help people with is what you're looking for isn't in there. I'm on one tonight and I can feel it because I'm trying to be serious, but lighthearted at the same time, but the serious vibes coming through. What you're looking for isn't in there or out there. It's in here. It's in here. And you know what I'm talking about, and I know what I'm talking about. And it's things like Qigong, Tai Chi, yoga, breathing exercises, and focusing on a positive emotion. So cultivating an inner smile, they're the things that will open the heart further and allow the soul to come out and actually guide us and navigate us through this absolute lunacy that's taking place in the world at the moment. I don't know whether I went on a bit there, but I'm going to pass it back to you to see if you've got any comments.
You said I go on. It takes one to know one, doesn't it, Doc? Right, cool, blimey, mate. Go up the apples and pears and all of that. But no, it's you know, it's just about balance, and it's about, you know, it's about finding that play, finding your own personal balance. You know, there's an interesting one, again, another interesting one is like, people talk about shadow work and dealing with your demons. It's like, you're still alive. There'll always be something there'll always be shadow work. There'll always be stuff, you know, you won't be all heavenly and all, that's the whole point of, I think, being here. There'll always be something to do. There'll always be that wave. That's the whole point. So, and people get trapped in that. People get trapped in, you were saying about like the happiness. I remember when I was close protection back in the 90s, I looked after millionaire and billionaires who 15 freaking houses, jets coming out of the freaking yin yang. And were they happy? Half them, like Puck, they were. There were some, but a lot of the ones that had, thought, the ones that really thought, you have to work to, and then you could be happy. You'll never be happy because there'll always be something to do. I said I did a TikTok and a Instagram, like, there's always 5,000 jobs. There's always 5,000 chores every single day that you need to do. And you have to find, at times, you just got to shut up, sit and look at the grass and look at the sky, freaking breathe and enjoy it, because there is that thing of if there's a chap hop. I love a thing called steampunk, and there's a chap hop rapper who says nobody is on their deathbed wishing they worked harder, and that's the point. Is that when you spend so much time trying to achieve what you want, but that actually not spending time actually enjoying the process on the way. There's all these great sayings of life. It's not the destination, it's the journey that, and stuff like this. And you have to remember to take time to enjoy it along the way, because otherwise you'll miss so much. And what Bruce Lee once said was, it's like a finger pointing towards the moon. Do not look at the finger, because you'll miss all that heavenly glory. Do not get hooked up on what your goal is, because otherwise you'll miss all the fun along the way. You have to do both. Over to you, Doc.
Thank you, Mr. Braithwaite. I think I've watched Enter the Dragon about 100 times, because that's when I was really into my Kung Fu. And I was learning Kung Fu to try and become more adept at looking after myself physically. And it didn't do anything for my fear whatsoever. Right? Because any time a sort of fight looked like it was kicking off, right, I was just a bit able to run away quicker, what I mean? And I used to berate myself to say, what's the matter with you? And I realized I'm just an emotionally sensitive chap on the inside, And I tried to use all sorts of physical methods to cure it. And really, the problem wasn't even emotional. The problem was spiritual. And I didn't understand that, Sifu. But then I got into letting the soft overcome the hard, letting the soft out and accepting the soft side of me. And the soft side of me is inclined much more towards the feminine aspect of me, not female. And I think people get mixed up with this. There's male and female. That's a now I'm not wanting to cause any trouble here. I'm just going to try and explain how I see things, right? So there's male and female, and that's to do with biology, and it's to do with physicality. But there's masculine and feminine. That's to do with gender, right? And all of us, if you're a human being, you will have some aspects of masculine within you and some aspects of feminine. You won't be male and female, you'll be masculine and feminine. And different people through different dimensions, if you like, or stages of their life and stages of their progression, sometimes they'll be more masculine inclined and sometimes they'll be more feminine. Now, some people, my wife, for example, she'd be better off wearing overalls and driving a heavy goods vehicle. Now she's happy with that because she's actually the more masculine in our relationship, and we accept that, So I'm much better at doing things like hoovering up and cooking. I'm watching right, I'm going to stop there because I'm joking now. But what I'm trying to say is, in actual fact, is all humans are androgynous. And they have different variations and different balances, and different people have different concentrations of one and the other. This actually works through the 7 different chakras, So there's much, much deeper, right, understandings here that are starting to come out. I don't know why I'm talking about this, but it seems to be causing a lot of people a lot of trouble, Yeah. And, it's quite clear to me. Accept who you are, but don't try and push your philosophies onto anybody else, right? I'm not trying to push my philosophy onto you. I'm just saying this is the way I see things. So if you see things in a different way, tell me, but leave it at that, And Christ knows why I'm saying this, but that's the way I feel about things. I think there's too many people trying to push their own agendas on people and trying to get their points across. And I don't think that's really to do with anything other than egomania, because I've been there myself many times.
Yeah. I agree with that 100%. And I just wanted to say, like you were saying about the like fighting, and it was an interesting me with fighting, because I got bullied in school and went into like martial arts, But the biggest thing, I loved meditation. One of the first martial arts I did was called Katina, and it only had like 26 moves, but it was actually like meditation was their big thing, and that I loved. And when I met my Sifu, they sort of pushed me along that way. And the interesting thing is that, yeah, I learned all these different martial arts. I learned 26 ways to kill somebody with a pair of chopsticks. Mainly the chopsticks are about 15 foot big, and you whack them over the head with them. But the point is, what I really learned once I learned all these martial arts and I could actually take a hit, I actually learned how to use humor, because my biggest martial art, Ogido, as I called it, was actually about defending yourself with humor. And one of the favorite movies, like one of the key principal movies to that for me, there was a movie with Steve Martin, the comedian, called Roxanne. And it was actually, it's actually a play of Bergerac, something like Bergerac. And this guy's got a very long nose, and he was a martial artist, and he fought everybody all the time because of his long nose. And then one day he fell in love, and he fell in love. He didn't want to fight, and this guy was big nose, and everybody went because they thought he was going to mash up everybody. And he goes, and they're in a bar, and he goes, "Here's a dart. There's a dartboard. Throw this dart at the dartboard, and I'll come up with whatever number you throw. I'll come up with something better." And he throws it, and this guy was a champion supposedly, and he threw a 20. I thought if he's a champion, he'd throw a 50. But anyway, throws a dart, gets a 20, and then Steve Martin character had to come up with 20 something betters. So he's taking the mickey out of himself, but also at the same time, as he takes the mickey out of himself, he's making this guy look like an idiot. Because he's coming up with rather than big nose, he's come up, God's made this nose so birds could perch on it. And so paranoid, keep that guy away from my cocaine and stuff like this. And I learned that humor is a far better weapon than anything, in that. And it's this whole thing with me, but not just a weapon, it's the far better healing. It's far better to get people to actually let go of their tension and their monkey mind when you can create humor, when you can throw things up. So to me, that divine the masculine side, the feminine side, yes, or the masculine feminine side, yep, but also that sacred child, that silliness, that humor, being able to take the mickey, for me is as important. And to me, there's not enough of it. There's not enough. I'm not saying you should be humorous or absolute idiot all the time, and believe it or not, that's not actually true. I'm not an idiot all the time. Some people think I am, but the whole idea, well, actually that's an interesting thing as well, because I've been serious and everybody still thinks I'm joking. So it's people only see what they want to. That's what I learned from that one, that like sometimes you can be actually deadly serious and oh you're so funny. It's like, no, I'm actually really serious right now. What? But people only see what they want to, and that's the thing you've got to understand, which leads to that whole thing of free will. You can't push you shouldn't push your ideas onto other people, because if you do, the universe has a way of slapping you hard. I've seen that and learned that. Over to you, Doc.
Janine says that this story is longer than Cyrano de Bergerac's nose, or something like that. Now, I agree with you, and I think in the end, we're all individually responsible for how we navigate our way through life. And it really depends where we get the information from. And I tried to listen to people outside of myself for a long time because I thought that's the way it was supposed to be. The first person I listened to more than any other was my mum. So for 38 years of my life, I basically tried to please my mother by doing what she thought was best for me. And there's no sort of blame or anything else here, because that's basically the system that's been gone on. That was the traditional approach for a long time. And it wasn't really until I understood that lots of my likes and dislikes, lots of my ideas, lots of my emotions, lots of my attitudes were not my own. Because people used to keep saying to me, especially my dad, he used to say, son, think for yourself, be yourself. And I thought I was being myself. And what I've learned was I wasn't being myself, that was really a secondary self that was running the show. And it was basically a conditioned self, almost like an automaton or a cybernetic sort of a creature, you know. And it was only when I sat down quietly and started to look inside did I realize that most of the ideas that were driving my life weren't mine. And that was a great big revelation to me. And it's almost like I got an opportunity to clean the slate and to feel deeper, and then to work through life then with a completely new, fresh sheet, but based upon my experience and how I felt about situations. And that's what's happened, Buggy. For the last 30 years, I've basically felt my way through every single situation, you know, and I've never felt more free. There's always work to do, like you said. The soul has always got to make some more progress, you know. And I can see that most of the time I was just revolving in the same old Groundhog Day on the same old treadmill, right? Hoping things would be different. But I see it differently now. If I face my disturbance and walk through the fear, it's almost like a spiral. And somebody pointed out to me that that's what the unicorn's horn is. It's a symbol of eternal spiral progress, getting closer and closer to the whole meaning of what this universal thing's about, you know. And I didn't understand any of this, you know, and more I'm getting visions, clear visions now. It's almost like things open up before me, but I've got to step through childhood and childlike fears now. And not only my own, I'm almost like dissipating ancestral energies now and their fears and things, you know. So what worked for them in the past don't necessarily work for me as an individual now. So that's what I'm really looking at. I'm sort of going quite deep tonight, but, you know, sometimes humor can be a defense mechanism. But I'm like you. I think I was born in the spirit of Heyoka, which is basically the joker of the tribe, you know. And I'm not stupid, and you're not stupid, and we're not ignorant. But sometimes you get a sense of that sometimes a bit of laughter, right, in the right way, diffuses situations, opens the heart, brings in different inspirations and ideas. Over to you, my son.
Yeah, very much so. And yeah, for me, again, going back to that balance, it's just learning to, you know, we're here to grow, we're here to learn. I say a lot, you know, the word Sifu. Sifu means guide, muse, and everybody, you know, and certain people will say, "Oh, it's master," and it's like, no, when you know, people like to put things in boxes, and we put words. Chinese words are very interesting because they normally have about 3 or 4 meanings at least, and the whole idea is because the concept that everything is more than one thing, so you can switch it about and you can understand it, and it's that whole idea that everybody's your guide. Everybody, you know, you're both the teacher and you're the student. You know, you're more than one thing, and you know, you're this and you're that. You're not just one or the other, and you've got to stop trying to put things in boxes and just let things be what they are, at least at that moment, and then grow and process from there. And I think for me, it's just about, yes, it's just about, you know, going with the flow, you know, riding that surf, that wave, that roller coaster, whatever you want to call it. But understand that it's all just part of the process. You know, don't get trapped in the past, the present, the future. Live in the moment, but know that, you know, everything interacts, everything around you is interactive. And I've a lot recently, in the last 6 months, more and more, seen everything as a metaphor. That, you know, things happening, or you know, just yesterday, a bug appeared and disappeared. We had a little beetle appear and disappear across the carpet, and I said to my partner Els, I said, read that up. What's that as a spirit animal, or in a meditation, a lucid dreaming book? What does that mean? Because I've always been that whatever happens, whatever you see is the universe talking to you, and there's quantum physics and the CIA, the Project Gateway was supposed to be all about this, that the universe is totally conscious and it talks to you all the time. And so when you start looking, and don't get too much hooked on all the metaphors all the time, because you get lost in that. But just be aware of, well, what does this mean? You know, what has this got more than one meaning? It's just a bug, but does it have a meaning? Is there something else? And does that mean something now? And it's just understanding that information can come from so many different places. It doesn't even have to be human. That, you know, because I've learned so much from standing near a tree, you know, spending time with a dog or a cat, or, you know, even the wind. You know, this everything really is your Sifu. Over to you, Doc.
No, I agree, mate. And, you know, I practice a lot of mindfulness, but mindfulness just simply means, in my view, just to be aware of your thoughts and feelings from one moment to the next. And I can see that most of my life were just basically reacting to patterns, you know. And I like the sort of the Zen philosophy, where they believe that really it's by going beyond mind, and they see mind as just a store place, you know, of memories. So in order to be novel and creative, we need to be in a place that's beyond mind. And in that place, there's no reference then to what's gone before. It's just a sort of emergence of a higher intelligence. I know this sounds a bit deep, but I'm beginning to see now that I thought that in order to be more successful, I need to bring in more and more knowledge. So I used to read as much as I can to develop my intellect. And somebody said to me when I tried to kill myself, they said to me, all that you've learned up to this point is not worth a carrot, is it? Because, and I thought, this is true, you know, this is true, because my head was filled with so much complexity that I was really sort of blocking what was trying to emerge. And I see quite clearly now that knowledge and wisdom are completely different. Knowledge is based on intellect and memory, right? But wisdom is based on intelligence. And I think that knowledge comes from the outside, whereas wisdom and intelligence comes from within. It emerges, you know. And I know most people who are listening to this will understand this, but is there a fast track, right, to get quicker up the sort of spiritual ladder? Well, first of all, there's no ladder, right? There's no fast track. There's just, this is it right at this moment. This is it, you know. So if you accept it as a sort of, isn't this interesting? You know, things start to become more clear. And I think that this is just about clarification more than anything else, you know. And I think I didn't know, you know, Sifu, I didn't know. And when I wake up in the morning, and I've said this before I open my eyes, I tap on my heart and open my heart. And I almost like say to myself, it sounds a bit religious, but it's not, because I don't believe it's all in religion. For me, I don't. If it works for you, then all well and good, that's great. But for me, I sort of discarded religion because I could see that it was an obstruction to my own sort of freedom, if you like. But I tap on my heart, I open my heart, I open my left ear, I sort of listen in, and I just say, hello. Have we got a good, it's like an internet connection, you know, and I feel it. We're here, kiddo, right? What we up to today? And I sort of get a sense of, it's almost like I get a to-do list, right? That's being managed. I just want to go on to something that's become important. And I know I'm going on a lot, but when I surrendered my will and my life over to the care of the universe, I wasn't giving it to something outside of myself. I was actually surrendering to my next level of intelligence, right? And that's what surrender means. I'm not giving in, right? I'm just letting go and dropping deeper. And it's almost like the deeper you drop, you find your level of your essential self, and then that starts to feed you. It's a bit like paging the oracle, you know. And by the way, the oracle at Delphi was feminine, right? I'm still trying to get over that one, but they're something that just gives me. So before I say anything else that upsets people, I'm going to pass it back to you.
Well, yeah, so I upset everybody all the time. That's not good. But no, yeah, I mean, yeah, it's just you just got to find your way, find your path. I mean, there's you're saying about like waking up in the morning. There was what was his name? The Sleeping Prophet, which was
Edgar Casey. Edgar Casey, yeah.
And very much funny or very much similar. He did something that in Taoism they talk about. It's like either when you're falling asleep or when you're waking up, you're the closest to the Tao. God, the universe, banana, whatever you want to call it. But the whole idea is that in between state where you actually just listen, you'll actually hear, you'll feel stuff and you'll hear stuff, and you can actually ask questions, and so things will come through. And it's very similar to that whole remote viewing thing, and that's the thing of there's a book. Oh, here we go, it's Taoism again. There's a book in Taoism called from Benjamin Hoff called The Tao of Pooh, the Tao of Winnie the Pooh. And the Tao of Winnie the Pooh is all about that. Winnie the Pooh is actually like a Taoist philosopher, because he's very simple, and he just goes for what feeds his belly, what feeds his heart, and he goes on all these adventures simply just going with the flow. And there was one of the things, or one of the stories, where they were in this impossible woods, him and Piglet, and I think it was, I can't remember who else was with them. Maybe it was Owl. And Owl said, "Oh, if you go this way and this way, you'll get out." And kept coming back to the center. And Pooh said, "Well, if we leave and try to find the center, we'll come back. We'll find the edge of the woods." And Owl said, "Oh, don't be so stupid. How's that? That doesn't make any sense at all." And they went out. And they went to find the center, and instead they found the edge of the woods instead. And it's like, sometimes you just have to go by, well, this is happening. Well, then let's do this and see, and then we'll get a different effect. And it's sort of that thing of, I think it was Einstein that said, don't doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result is sign of stupidity. And it's that whole idea of, you've got to go with the flow sometimes. Don't, at the same time, sometimes you've got, keep doing something, but maybe slightly different to because, there's a probability effect that eventually, if you keep doing the same thing, there is a probability that you eventually, the chances of, say, getting a 6 becomes more and more and more.
Yeah.
But it doesn't stop you from flipping it instead of rolling it and doing it in different ways. So this whole idea of making things, fun. Think of this. There's a lot of people that talk about the Matrix and, this is the Matrix. I don't see it as a Matrix. I see it as an educational tool. I see it as, some sort of a game of sorts, but far more about experience and about learning. And hence, I've always said, there is no good or bad. There just is. And 20 years ago, boy, did that used to get me in trouble. Like you offending people. I used to offend people by saying that. What about this? What about that? What about the other? And it's like, but something bad happens. Lots of bad things, so-called bad things, have happened in my life that led to so much wonder and so much knowledge and so many good things. So at the time, they were crap, yes, but that led to something else. The whole up and down. So you've got to stop. Again, going back to those boxes, stop putting things in boxes and just go with the flow and just let things going with the flow. Let yourself drift along that stream, the universal stream, and you'll find it will at some point bring you to where you need to be, or bring you to the edge. And my teachers did that to me, literally, physically. They threw me into the river and they swim to the border, this sort of strong river in China. And I swam and swam and swam. I was freaking knackered when I eventually got to the end. And just as I got up, they pushed me in again, the fuckers. And they said, "Now relax." It's like, what the fuck? I had no choice. I was knackered. So I just relaxed. And eventually it pushed me to the side. Because I was so relaxed like a log, I eventually pushed me to the side. And its lesson was that the universe is just the same. Don't waste your time trying when you should just do. Don't try, do. But hey, I could be talking a load of poo. Now it's over to you.
Yeah, live in, let go, because we're in this sort of ocean of information, and just sometimes you just need to just sit and allow it to come in and go with the thing that moves you from deep within. And that's the way I see things now. You know, I'm not perfect at this, but I'm getting better at it every single day, really, you know. But what I've come to realize is I've got no idea what anybody else should do, because I don't know what I should do from one moment to the next until I feel it, you know. And people say, well, you've got all these qualifications, surely you should know. And I haven't got a clue. And I think anybody who helps anybody, counselors and stuff like that, in my view, the whole purpose of counseling is it's like an educational process, where education means to draw out of. That's the root word, educere in Latin. It means to draw out of. So really, I think that counseling and mentoring and coaching, right, is about developing an action plan for somebody based upon what they feel at depth they need to do next. You know what I mean? Because the thing is, I used to, be an ambulance chaser, and I'd say, what you need to do is this, right? And they go and do it and it wouldn't work. And so they blame me then. So it was almost like disabling and disempowering for them. So now I've learned, they're called clean communication skills. It's whereby you don't give anybody any advice. You just listen to what they're saying, right? And you try and help them. You mentioned about everything's metaphorical, and I agree with you. You know, is if you can help them to make meaning of the information that's coming up with them, you don't have to understand it. But if they go, you know, when you're working with somebody and their light goes on and you think, my God, that's just reminded me of something. That's the process, really, I think. You know, so we become we become like snake charmers in a way. And that's the way I feel when I'm trying to guide and help other people. It's only by turning them back to themselves, really. And I think that's more important than anything else, you know. So listen, old chap, we've got 4 minutes to go. So say something wise. That's it. You never spoke. That was wise. That was wise.
Yeah. Breathe in the chi, the light, the energy, everything you want. Breathe out the cha, the stress, the worry, everything you no longer need. Breathe in the chi, breathe out the cha, and you'll go far. Over to you, old chap.
Breathe in the light, breathe out the shite. That's, you said it. You said it in Chinese. I said it in more sort of colloquial stuff, really.
Yes.
And people have accused me of being crude. I've had people tell me, honestly, this is true, this. I've had people saying to me, you'll be able to pass the message on better if you're less crude and more refined. You know, use this word and don't say this. And I've had to feel my way through that because, you know, I have to feel and I listen to what other people say. And I felt like, no, because this is who I am. I like to make rude jokes, right? If you get offended by it, it's not my problem. It's the way you're processing it and perceiving it. That's the problem. You know, it's a bit like swearing up to a point, you know, right? Up to a point, right? You can go too far with that. But really, if one word is causing you to have emotional disturbance, then you're basically the victim of a word. It's a bit like the N word, naughty, or any other N words, really. Because if you kick off, if somebody uses a particular word, who's the victim? Who's the victim? So all this stuff about don't call me this, call me that, right? As I said before, it's just a great big ego trip, right? And if you want to be controlled, it's a bit like kids in the playground. Once they find out your weak spots, they just keep picking on it all the time, don't they? And so the way to deal with that is to, as my dad would say, is just take no effing notice, son. Just let it open one ear, open the other, and let it go straight through and carry on finding some enjoyment in your life. Very quickly,
when I was younger, this may be backwards, which is probably a good job, but when I was younger, I wasn't a great swearer, but I you know, sometimes you know, a swear word is needed. So I had a belt buckle, and I would say to people, "Read my belt."
Yeah.
And,
well, that's
and,
one of my.
So,
go on, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, and that's the thing. So sometimes it's all a load of hollocks, And you know, and sometimes a good, and but what I've noticed also is that where I change words, or like say hollocks or puck, and people hear what they want to hear. Because a lot of you swear, and but no, if you actually rewind back and listen to what I said, you didn't swear at all. But people hear what they want to hear. They choose, you know, people get offended by things, but like, why are you getting offended? You know, they're just words, it's just stuff. And if you're getting offended, it's actually telling you what you need to work on. That's why we get offended, because we need to work on that thing. Right,
I agree. Yeah.
that's it.
And I think, no, that's great, mate. And I love you, and thank you for turning up eventually.
Yes, eventually. Oh, what a nightmare. But anyway, it's been a great day, and it's been a great show. And take care all, and see you again soon. Love you, mate. See you later.
Tatty bye. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye bye.
Bye bye.